show me how to love. Maybe I'm going through a drought. You don't even have to do too much. You can turn me on with just a touch, baby. I look around, see the city's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I just, I'm running out of time, 'cause I can see the sun light up the sky. So I hit the road in overdrive, baby. Oh, the city's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I just want to.
Hi and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Tech Talks with Community Foundation of Ocala, Marion County. And we are here today with Chris Panshad of the Bloomerang Tech amazing donor management software. I am so excited to have Chris with us today. Chris, those are all my housekeeping. I put in the chat, and now we're streaming live on Facebook. If you have any questions, please put those in the chats or in the comments so that I can get those lined up for Chris. Everyone on the Zoom will be muted until the end. So if you have any questions or any technical issues, please let me know in the chat. Chris, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now I got to do is figure out how to share my screen. And I had that here in front of me and then it disappeared. There it is. All right. There. I hope that worked.
It did. We are clear to go.
All right, good. So Kelsey, you can hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, excellent. Interrupt me when you need me to stop. I'm going to start with a short overview about Bloomerang, the business, before I dig into the actual software. For those of you that haven't heard of us or don't know much about us or are curious about us, here's me doing one of my favorite things. I've been at Bloomerang for 7 years. I'm their oldest surviving salesperson. Actually, I've been there longer than anybody on the sales team. I was employee roughly number 20 when it was a little itty bitty company. Before Bloomerang, I worked for 7 years at eTapestry. So I've got a lot of experience with different kinds of platforms. And you can see the things that I like to do there, including catching that nice specimen of a brown trout there. And I do a lot of other things that are really time consuming, like cycling and golf. And it's a wonder I ever actually get any work done. This is my boss, Jay Love. He's the founder of the company. And he is, while he's in a state of sort of semi-retirement, he's still in the office almost every day. Well, in the office when we're allowed to be in the office. He serves as our chief relationship officer. He was the founder of eTapestry, so I had the privilege of working for him there as well as at Bloomerang, and I'm really proud to be a part of everything that he's doing. and you'll see why as we get into the presentation a little bit more. This is different organizations like Bloomerang for different kinds of reasons, but here are some of the things that almost everybody either asks about or benefits from. First of all, maximum usability. We think that the database should be easy to use and helpful for everybody who has any connection at all to development and fundraising. However, very few nonprofits will actually spend money on software just because they need something easier to use. Most buying decisions are based on a clearly defined opportunity to increase revenue. And I'll show you some everyday examples of how Bloomerang contributes to your revenue stream and will minimize your expense. Now, expense is a relative item. We have customers paying anywhere from a couple $100 a year to something up in the approaching $20,000 per year. So we're very proud of the way that we can fit and right size a Bloomerang application for just about every nonprofit. The real basis for why we exist emanates from AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and their now fairly famous project called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project that they do every year in conjunction with the Urban Institute. They do a lot of great research that has informed a lot of Bloomerang's work. And the most important thing that we've taken from that, or the thing that we put front and center in Bloomerang, is the problem of donor attrition or lack of donor retention. You'll see these are fairly recent stats, I think from late 2019. You'll see the average retention rate on the left is only about 45%. That means for most nonprofits, fewer than half their donors who are around in one fundraising cycle are around for the next cycle. That's kind of startling to some folks, but that is the honest to gosh truth. And you'll see next to that, first time donors is an especially difficult nut to crack. About 80% of donors who show up for the first time have also shown up for the last time. And our goal, among other things, is to do something specifically about that. Well, there it is in big bold letters. 75 or 80% of first time donors will never be around to make the second gift. The troubling part about this for us at Bloomerang is that most nonprofits don't even recognize this is going on in the background. It's not something that's obvious unless you're really digging to discover it. So if it's something that most databases don't tell you much about retention, so a lot of fundraisers don't even recognize the scope of the problem that they might have in terms of donor retention. So we have staked our reputation along with the reputations of some of the most well-known and respected fundraising experts in the world, like Dr. Adrian Sargent. Many of you are probably familiar with his name. He's a professor at the IU School of Philanthropy here in Indiana. He also teaches a 40-hour online fundraising class, a boot camp that he teaches to students around the world. And he's also a key contributor to Bloomerang's product for all things related to donor engagement and retention. And I'll explain some of those features in a minute. Kibby LaRue-Miller is our expert on online marketing. We'll have some good examples about that. And Tom Ahern out of beautiful Providence, Rhode Island is I think arguably, or maybe even inarguably, the world's foremost authority on donor communication. So we do all of our donor centricity emanates from Tom's expertise. So what we aim to do at Bloomerang is to, number one, create an awareness of your retention and relationship situation. And that's what Dr. Sargent has helped us with. We want to automate and provide concrete examples of functions that you can use to increase Well, it says here your first time retention, but all of your donor retention. Charities that increase their donor retention rate by just a few percentage points can make a huge difference in their annual income and in particularly in the lifetime revenue of all their donors. Thirdly, we're a big advocate of mining your data to identify your best large gift prospects. And I'll show you some easy examples of how Bloomerang points you to your best major donor opportunities. And then, of course, donor-centric communications. We already talked about Kivi LaRue Miller and Tom Ahern and how their expertise contributes to that. And I'll show you some specific examples. We just rolled out a fabulous iOS app, mobile app, and it's had tremendous uptake. It's only been out for about 60 days, and it's more than just a copy of your database to take in the field. It's meant to be a one-on-one asking tool for you, and there's a lot we can say about that too. So for nonprofits who are considering a new donor database, I would suggest that you take the following action steps. Number one, ask yourself, and this is a big part of our sales process, is doing a needs assessment. But determine, is our current solution helping us to increase our income, specifically in the way of retention and larger gifts? If not, we need to be able to identify the specific obstacles to increasing our revenue. To say I want to raise more money is a nice aspiration, but determining what your strengths and weaknesses are and what's holding you back is a key component of success. And if you decide to buy a new database, there are a lot of these questions that a lot of introspection that you ought to do to make sure you're making the right steps. And of course, if you think, if you have good answers to the first two questions, I'd like to encourage you to take a robust evaluation of Bloomerang. And of course, fourth step is completely optional, but if I got a call from you, that'll be a beautiful thing. So let me move into my screen to cooperate here. And we'll go right to my Bloomerang database. Now, one of the problems I've had all day as I work from home and all my neighbors are working from home, our local neighborhood internet has had to take the place of commercial internet. So it's been running a little slow. I'll try to minimize the drag on this. But this is your Bloomerang dashboard. This is what every constituent sees when they log in. And no, we don't have customizable dashboards, and there's a good reason for that. The most notable reason is we always err on the side of simplicity and usability. So we don't have too much information on the screen, and we don't allow for a lot of different versions of the screen because we want this one to work really well. You'll see the very first visual on your dashboard is your donor retention gauge, and that follows suit with our philosophy that I was explaining a moment ago. In my case, in my hypothetical nonprofit, this is telling me that I had 616 donors in the previous 12-month cycle, and that's usually a rolling year that ends today. So in the year that ended a year ago today, I had 616 active donors. Of those 616, only 337 of them are current donors. So my retention rate is 54%. That doesn't necessarily mean my number of donors went down, but it means that I lost a couple hundred of my good donors from the previous 12 months. So more than just telling you about your problems, we give you some easy steps to act on it. For example, if I want to find out where this gap is between the 337 and the 616, I can just click on my retention gauge and it will quickly, well, usually it's quickly, run a report of all of my constituents who have fallen into that lapsed category. And I'm bringing my results up now. At least I think I am there. So it found 279 households who had given in the previous 12 months, but I haven't heard from them in at least 12 months. It tells me the name of every constituent, and the report also tells me how much each constituent gave, so I can see every revenue opportunity that I might have missed. It also gives me a total at the top of the total number of lapsed dollars that have leaked out the bottom of the bucket. So what do I do about it? Well, I might do a couple things. First, I would probably sort the list on the amount of that last transaction so I can see where my biggest gaps are. And so my largest donors are at the top of the list. So what I might do if I were the executive director or the chief development officer is go through this list and draw a line maybe at the $1,000 mark, and everybody above that line is going to get a personal phone call from me. And I can drill into the, if I want to see Sheila there, I can drill into the constituent record of anybody that's on that report by simply clicking on the name and see her profile. After I cull out my top donors, I might go directly to a mass email by using the Bloomerang mass email tool, which you see right there. And use the lapsed donor recovery email template that I've created specifically for this purpose. The filter in the email tells me who's going to be on my recipient list. And while I can choose any fields from my Bloomerang database here in the filters to be the criteria for my list, I'm just pulling that lapsed donor report because I already know who all those people are. This is from a demo I just did earlier today for the Hospice of Southern Kentucky. You'll see in the integrated mass email, this is native to Bloomerang. It's built right in. It's not a module or a bolt-on or an integration. You'll see I have merge fields in the email, such as the first name. So I'm going to call each lapsed donor by his or her first name, and I'm going to thank them specifically for the amount they gave me last year by pulling that merge field dynamically from the database. And then of course I continue to tell my story, and then I ask them to click at the link, which will take them to my online donation form, which is also integrated right into Bloomerang. So all online donations would be immediately accounted for and acknowledged right in the database. But the important part is the dynamic data pull from the database can allow me to be really specific and personal in every email. And these are the things that Tom Ahern and Kivy Miller have helped us to perfect. And then I can go ahead and launch that email and send it. And within 5 minutes, I have an email in the hands of all of my lapsed donors who have email addresses. The others, I'll use the letter function. Come on, internet. And using the built-in letter tool, I can use those same merge fields, thanking the donor for the amount of their last donation. And you see I didn't really finish writing my letter. And again, the filter is going to go to my lapsed donors from my dashboard. I'll probably filter out those that have email addresses because they would have gotten my email. But if I do that roughly once a month, I can spend 5 minutes and make a decent dent in my donor retention rate. And again, a small increase over the course of a few years has a tremendous impact on your bottom line. Other things you'll see on the dashboard related to donor retention include my heads up on first-time donors. It prompts me to make a quick phone call to any new donors because our research with with AFP and the Fundraising Effectiveness Project that I referred to a few minutes ago says that you have a 400% greater chance of keeping a donor in the family year over year if you reach out to them when they're brand new. So by spending 5 or 10 or 15 minutes at the first part of the day to make those first-time donor calls will go a long way towards contributing to an increased donor retention rate, in addition to the tools that I just showed you. Other items on the dashboard are some FYI. I can see how much money I've raised during the current week, and I can see how much I've raised this month and during my fiscal year. And any campaigns that I have in the works are documented down here in my campaign progress bar. You'll see I'm 25% of my way to my hypothetical $300,000 goal with $76,000 raised. Every time I enter a donation that I attribute to that campaign will bump this progress bar a little bit. And here I have multiple campaigns that I might be following. I can see I'm 34% of the way to my capital campaign. My to-dos are all right here. Each user will have his or her own to-do list, task list here. And let's go from here to see what a constituent record looks like, so you can see how data is organized in Bloomerang. So I'm going to look up. You'll see as I type, it suggests names the same way a Google search would. We call it a fuzzy logic search. So you don't need to know how to spell the name exactly to get the right results. I'm going to look at Rhonda here. Now, Rhonda is kind of a ringer. She's got a lot of great stuff in her record that makes for a lively demo. Each constituent has a summary tab that gives you a complete 360 view of their situation all on one screen. I can see her lifetime giving summary charted out here on a graph. I can see her lifetime key statistics here. And I can see her recent timeline. So anything that's transpired lately between us will be here in the timeline. I don't need to look in different places to see donations, pledges, actions or interactions, things like that. Everything that happens will show up in the timeline. So I can see we have a phone call scheduled with her for the 11th. She made a website visit in March, and we had some correspondence with her. It was a thank you letter, no doubt, for this donation that she made. And you'll see we have a soft credit attributed to her. So we can see at a glance, if I'm going to make a phone call to Rhonda, I can look at her timeline quickly and see what our relationship has looked like, and I can pick up the conversation with her at a logical point. Now, a couple of exclusive things about Bloomerang, and this is where Dr. Sargent's handiwork comes in, is in this engagement level ranking. Every constituent has an engagement level. This is an internal look at how much this person seems to care about my organization. Engagement can be anywhere from cold on up to, in Rhonda's case, she's on fire. She's at my highest engagement level. And this doesn't mean necessarily that she's a huge donor, although she has a lot of donations to her credit. It's more indicative of her pattern of behavior that suggests how much she cares about my nonprofit. It's based on the timeline, and Dr. Adrian Sargent has built an algorithm in Bloomerang that reads the timeline and assigns a certain kind of weight to each type of activity, and the sum of that weight is her engagement level. So donations obviously have a certain weight. A repeat donation will have more weight than the first donation because it indicates an ongoing interest. Also things like logging volunteer hours, if she attends my events, if she even opens my email, all those things will contribute to a higher engagement level. Conversely, if she lapses or she downgrades her giving or we don't hear from her for a long time, her engagement level would begin to slip. And this is more than a badge on her record. This is a searchable, reportable field that we can use to segment our database to look for opportunities to leverage this engagement for a greater giving opportunity. And I'll show you some examples of that in just a minute. To complement the engagement level is the generosity score. That we use the same scale, cold to on fire. Rhonda happens to be on fire in both cases, but they're not really related to each other. While engagement level is an internal look about how much she cares about my organization, generosity is an external look at her philanthropic profile. So it looks for things like her generosity with nonprofits in general, what kind of charitable giving is in her track record, what kind of wealth indicators does she have, real estate, business interests, and things like that. And also, what kind of philanthropic connections does she have? Does she serve with any nonprofits? Does she have connections in the philanthropic world? Has she been an officer or a board member, or does she maybe have a nonprofit of her own? So if I want to see the details behind her generosity score, I click on the donor search link, and it takes me to our integrated partner donor search, where I can see everything that we can learn about her philanthropically all in one place. I can see what kind of charitable giving she has in her history. If I click on that, it'll show me all the donations that we can trace back to her or her household, and the approximate ranges in which she gave. So Rhonda has a lot of 5 and 6 and even 7-figure donations. So that means she's certainly a capable giver. I can see things like real estate. I can see what kind of assessed valuation she has to her credit. This is an interesting one here. There's a flag, a green flag on her 990 line. That means that she must have her own foundation, which she indeed does. You'll see there's a Rhonda Stryker and William Johnston Family Foundation, which is a good indicator of generosity, obviously. I can see what other nonprofits she or her husband might be affiliated with. So if I look at Bronson Lakeview Hospital, I see that William has been a director for about a dozen years at the hospital. I can see Southwest Michigan First, which is like their Chamber of Commerce up there in Southwest Michigan, I think. And her husband, William, was also a past chairman as well as a director. So I see lots of great philanthropic connections, and that also informs this relationships and affiliations. So if I look at relationships, I can see organizations where they have relationships, and if I click on Southwest Michigan First, I can see all the board members that William served with there. So maybe I know some of these people who might provide an entree to a conversation with William or with Rhonda. Donor search is separate from Bloomerang. We sell it as an option, but we're a single source vendor, and we can sell donor search along with the database and do all the integration for you. So this generosity score and the donor search link is live in every case. We also see on her summary page any relationships that she has. You see she's a pretty high profile woman. She's got a lot of A-lister friends in here, like Serena Williams. These are all reciprocal links to other records. So here's her husband's record. If I click on his name, I go right to his record, and I can see all of his relationships. And so on. So the summary page is a real good 360-degree overview of what her relationship is with my organization, as well as a link to her wealth and generosity details in donor search. On her profile is where we keep all of her personal and demographic information. You see she has multiple addresses that we're tracking there, and here's all of her contact and salutation information. But we also might have any number of custom fields to track demographic interests and flags that are relevant for your nonprofit. In her case, we have her tagged as a friend or family member of somebody that we've served. We have her tagged as a volunteer. If I were an academic institution, we might have her tagged as an alumnus with a graduation year. And and affinity and any number of fields. These are all customized for each constituent, and you have complete control over what appears on this screen. And everything here is searchable and reportable. So all this data is useful for segmenting lists and running reports and anything that requires leveraging your data. So that's the short course of what a constituent record looks like and how we organize data in Bloomerang. So I'm going to keep moving down my navigation bar here and dig into reports, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the database really proves itself in terms of its value. Any database can store data for you. You can enter as much data as you want in just about any program. Getting data out that's useful and easy is where we think Bloomerang really soars. So I'm going to start by looking at my basic constituent report, show you some real life example how we would apply some of the data that we just looked at into a useful report. So my little hypothetical database here has about 2,700 constituents in it. And I have basically an empty report as far as filters are concerned. So I'm going to add my first filter to determine who of my 2,700 constituents I have in this list. So I'll add a filter, and when I do that, it shows me every field in my Bloomerang database. And I can use as criteria for narrowing my report. So some of the things we just looked at, I'm going to look at engagement level. I told you that engagement level is a searchable, reportable field. Here are all my different levels of engagement that a constituent might have. And I want just the ones who are on fire, my most highly engaged constituents. By simply adding that filter, I narrow my list to 122 constituents. So you noticed, I hope, that as I add the filter, it automatically refreshes the report right on the fly. I don't have to run the report to see what my filters look like. It'll give me the results immediately, so I can see if I make a mistake and I get 0 constituents or I get 1,000,000 constituents, I'll know that I may have erred on the filter, but I can fix it while I'm still here. Maybe I want all of my highly engaged constituents who also have a high generosity score. So I'll add another filter, and I can scroll down to find it, or I can just search for it. And here are all my generosity ratings. So I want just my on fire generosity score. Now my list is down to 8. So I'm about to filter myself out of existence here. Maybe I want all of these constituents who are on fire, who are volunteers with my organization. So I'll go to my attributes field, which is where I have among other things, a volunteer tag. You'll remember this, I think, from the constituent profile tab. I'll add that criterion, and I'm down to 4. So I don't have a lot of results to show for this particular report, but what I hope you see is how easy and intuitive the reporting and filtering process is. I like to compare it to coloring by numbers. And it's easy enough that a salesperson can do it. And I dare say easy enough that even most fundraisers would be able to use it with a minimal amount of training and support. So other examples of reports that I'm asked to show frequently in demonstrations include things like, let me go over here to our templates. We have a lot of, this is sort of an improvement on what we used to call canned reports. These aren't canned reports, these are report templates, meaning that they're starting points for your reports. That means that you can take a starting point, it gives you a running start, and then you can personalize it and make it your own. For example, you can see a lot of the reports on here. High potential donors, live bunts and side bunts, pledge reminders, Projected cash flow is a very popular one. If you have outstanding pledges and a lot of recurring monthly donors, this helps you to actually project your expected cash flow based on revenue that's already been promised to you. Let's look at our LIBUNT report. If I click on that, it'll run a straight up LIBUNT report. LIBUNT stands for last year, but not this year, for those of you that aren't familiar with the jargon. So it's everybody who gave in the last fiscal year, but not the current fiscal year. And I'm gonna come up with 431 donors that did not give this year who gave last year. And if I wanted to target a mailing or some kind of an appeal to these donors, a recovery appeal, I might want to weed out the ones that gave the nickel dime donations. I want to set a minimum threshold. So I'm going to take this report and set the standard. Instead of anything at all, I want them to have given me at least $500 last year. So I'm taking this canned report, so to speak, and eventually making it specific to my particular use. I want to do a recovery appeal for those that have made significant donations at $500 and up. And then I'll add, here are the standard headers that come out of this report, but I might want to add things like address. If I click the add column, I can add anything in the database. Update my report. I said update my report. There you go. Super simple. So reporting, there's a lot. We could spend a whole session just on reporting, because this, as I said, is where most databases will prove themselves or not. But I'll run one more just for, because this is one that I also get asked about a lot, is my daily cash report for the finance team. In this case, I'm running it for an entire month, just to give the report a little bit of heft. So this is a deposit report or an accounting journal entry report that I would deliver to my finance person. This tells me that for the month, I had a little over $10,000 in total transactions, and I have it grouped by fund or restriction. So 4,900 of that was in 40 transactions in my unrestricted category. And I have 2 contributions to my capital building fund totaling $20.25, 1 contribution to my endowment fund for $500, and so forth. I can see each individual transaction in each category. And I can also see, if you see my column headers, I can see the bank account, debit account, and credit account that my finance officer would use to attribute these to the appropriate place in the general ledger. If I don't want to see all the detail on all these transactions, I can simply collapse them so I have just one row for each fund. And now I have 8 groups. Unrestricted, there's my total of $49.89. My capital fund had $20,000 or $2,025 and so forth. So this is one that we get a lot of mileage out of. Super easy to run. The CFO or finance or bookkeeper usually loves this report. I can save this and export it to Excel and email them the file. We also integrate with QuickBooks and with Aplos, so you can skip the report altogether and link directly to your accounting system if you're using one of those. I touched briefly on the letters. You can generate your own thank yous and appeals and any other type of printed communication right from Bloomerang. If I want to run my daily thank yous, for example, at the end of the day, think I have 2 or 3 donations that I received today to my pretend organization. And I think my internet is getting more tired as the day goes on. I might have to give it a Diet Coke or something. Okay, I have just 1 donation today. So I'm going to go ahead and get Catherine's thank you letter out by just launching it from here. There's a preview. I can run the letter. This will create just a 1-page document, but if I had a few or a bunch, I would get all the letters in one run. I'm glad I'm only running 1 since this is running a little slowly. Here's Catherine's thank you. It thanked her specifically for her generous donation. All her merge fields are there. And if I look at her record, Dr. Heltsley, she was open earlier today, so I can click on her name. I'll see not only her donation, but now I see her thank you letter is right on her timeline, and I can click through there and actually get a backup copy if I need to send her a backup when she calls me in January to tell me that she lost her tax letter. Email, we touched on that when we did our lapsed donor recovery email, but the email tool is new and improved. We just upgraded the email tool. So with the native email tool in Bloomerang is meant to emulate if you're familiar with MailChimp or Constant Contact, the interface is very similar. The big advantage to using Bloomerang is that you can use Bloomerang data as your filters to determine your constituent recipient lists. And you can also pull merge fields in real time from the database to really get on target and really personal with your giving. We also have a new integration with MailChimp. So if you're a MailChimp user, you can integrate your existing MailChimp account and Bloomerang will push all the appropriate data out from Bloomerang, send it through MailChimp, and still be able to do all of your tracking. You'll see we have all of our tracking and deliverability results are built in, and all the interactions. Anytime somebody has sent an email, anytime they open an email, all that is documented on the timeline for each constituent. So that's about 90% of what 90% of our customers would be using Bloomerang for every day. There's more that I could show you right now, but I know you've been sort of drinking from a fire hose for the last 30 or 40 minutes. So maybe this is a good time for me to stop and ask if we can answer any questions or anything glaring that was left out.
I'm happy to unmute you if anybody has a question, or you can put them in the chat and I'd be happy to read them. Or if you're following us on Facebook, feel free to go ahead and put those comments right there on the live stream and I am happy to read those as well.
Mm-hmm.
I know that one of the big questions we had yesterday was also pricing, but questions about the customer service. We have a lot of people who have had experience with some other platforms maybe that have not been very affordable when it comes to customer service, or it costs extra money to speak with a person. So if you could go into a little bit of detail, Chris, about that, and then also breaking down the pricing that has come through our chat.
Oh, yes. Obvious questions I guess I should have anticipated.
No problem.
The pricing scale and the pricing is, we're very transparent. All the pricing is right on our website. If you go there, what you'll learn is that if you have fewer than 1,000 constituent records in your database, and that's how we're priced, our base price is based on the number of constituents. Under 1,000 is the equivalent of $99 a month. It's usually billed annually. So your annual subscription price is exactly $1,188. That's kind of a subsidized rate for our smallest customers with only something in the hundreds of records. If you have up to 5,000 records, then it's $199 a month, or just under $2,400 per year. And then it goes up in the annual subscription goes up in increments of $1,200 as you go from 5,000 records to 15,000 records to 25,000 records, and so on. So if you're over 5,000 and under 15,000, the annual subscription is just under $3,600. Now that doesn't tell the whole story. So in all candor, that's not the only thing you should budget for. The base price does include unlimited customer support by email and chat, and our customers just love it. So if you're shopping and comparing databases, you should ask your Bloomerang sales rep to share with you some references in your area or other customers who are in a similar business to yours, and ask them specifically about customer support, because I guarantee almost to a person, they will tell you that it exceeded their expectations. Now, for new customers, I usually recommend the unlimited phone support in addition to the email and chat support, because new customers always have a lot more questions than repeat customers. Not always easy to articulate in an email or a chat. And that is a little bit extra. Honestly, most of our customers will use the phone support pretty robustly in the first year, but once they get up to speed, they don't have so much use for it. So I would say a little more than half of our customers probably don't renew their phone support piece into the second year. The donor search piece that I showed you, where we dug into the wealth profiles of every constituent, that's usually about a few $100s per year for most of our customers, between $300 and $500 a year. And there is usually some kind of upfront expense, a one-time expense, in terms of data conversion. And that can range from free or almost free, depending upon what you have. A conversion from Razor's Edge at the higher end of the scale can be around $4,000. So yours is probably someplace in between. So I don't mean to, your salesperson could help you, will walk through your database project with you and give you a precise price that we will stick with, a guaranteed price on your data conversion. So that is something that you need to budget for in most cases, unless you're starting from scratch.
Great question.
And
Awesome.
very little beyond that, there's very little extra that anybody ever pays for with Bloomerang. There are a handful of data services and upgrades that we do. But the donor search piece for a few $100s a year is really the only add-on that most of our customers buy. So it's very easy to come up with a very reliable price. I might also add that we've never raised our prices at Bloomerang in the 8 or 9 years we've been in business. We've grown our revenue by broadening our customer base, not by extracting more money from our existing customers.
Do we have other questions that I can go ahead and share?
Either I answered every conceivable question or I've put everybody to sleep.
It's one or the other, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it was putting people to sleep. You have been very thorough.
I have a quick question.
Right ahead.
Okay. In the process, if you already have a management system and you are deciding to move to Bloomerang, obviously there's a conversion process. Is there extra charge for converting the data? And secondly, how long does it usually take for the team to convert all the data to the platform?
That's another great question. Well, as I said a minute ago, there's going to be some cost for data conversion ranging from maybe almost nothing, depending if you have just a little bit of data, up to like Razor's Edge to do a data conversion would be about around $4,000 in a lot of cases, and everything in between. We've converted GiftWorks, eTapestry, Neon, Donor Perfect. We've seen every one, and we could give you ballpark prices for each of those. The timeline, and that's also that's an important question. So I'm glad that you asked me. Is it varies a little bit. Razor's Edge is usually among our longest timelines, and we recommend that you budget between 90 and 120 days from the day you start till the day that you go live with your new database. eTapestry customers can expect to spend maybe about 8 weeks. GiftWorks is probably a little bit less than that. And if you have just an Excel file that we can work with, that might be more like 2 or 3 weeks. So it depends. As a corollary to that, it's also important that if you're planning on replacing your database and you're in a contract with a vendor, you need to be aware of what the term of your contract is. It probably has an expiration renewal date, and it probably also has a minimum notification requirement of 45 days or maybe even 60 days. Customers of certain brands that we're familiar with have accidentally slept on their renewal date and gotten them stuck in an auto-renewed 3-year contract, which causes a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth. So there's a lot that goes on. There are a lot of questions surrounding the whole data conversion process, and your Bloomerang account executive will help you to walk through all of the whys and wherefores to make sure that you've answered all the right questions for your own account as well as for our benefit.
Do we have any other questions that we've been able to come up with? I was just looking, and I'm not sure if you can see my screen, Chris, but I was looking at this LIGHT program and the GROW program.
Yes.
If you want to.
Yeah, I'd love to. So we have some real, if you're a young startup or a bare bones operation just trying to get yourself out of the starting gate in terms of fundraising, we have some great subsidized offers that I didn't mention. If you so our LIGHT program is free if you have under $100,000 in annual revenue, and that's per your 990 as published in GuideStar. That's the gauge we use. And you have under 250 records in your database, then it's free. You can use everything in Bloomerang for nothing for as long as you remain a little itty bitty organization. Our Grow and Grow Plus and other programs are, as you can see, it's a sliding scale based on the number of records and on your annual income. I believe those programs are good for your first 2 years of Bloomerang. You can buy in for as low as 19 bucks a month and enjoy that price for up to 2 years before you have to convert to whatever your current rate would be. Typically, it'll be the $99 a month is where you'd wind up after 2 years of that. So we do, obviously as salespeople, we all love the big juicy deals, but there's nothing that gets us more stoked than helping a budding fundraising success story get off the ground. So we love these customers at every level of our organization.
That's great. I'm glad that you covered that because I think that's a really important point. Feel free. We still have not gotten any questions. I feel like you have done an excellent job with this, but if you have anything else you want to add, we do have just a couple minutes left before the top of the hour.
Well, as just a word to the wise, as I said back in the at the beginning of the presentation, most of our sales processes, so to speak, are unsuccessful if the customer doesn't have some kind of a vision for where they want to be financially with their organization or with their database. And so we ask a lot of questions. If you invite an Bloomerang account executive, we usually start with a needs assessment to help to establish together, just what are the problems you're trying to solve, and what is at stake here. If it's just ease of use, most organizations won't actually spend much money to improve ease of use. But if they can get improved ease of use that also leads to more revenue, and you know what that gap is, and we ask a lot of questions to help you to answer that for yourself, that is usually the determinant of how valuable a new, whether it's Bloomerang or anything else, that's how that will be the determinant of the value of that proposition. So we ask a lot of questions, and we encourage you to kind of you owe it to yourself to understand your own situation well enough so that you can see whether something like this would make sense for you.
It's great advice. Well, I don't want to sit here with too much awkward silence on a Zoom. That's never too much fun. So what I will do is I'll have one last call for questions, and if we don't get anything in the chat here in the comments, I'll go ahead and let us get a couple extra minutes back to our afternoon, if that's all right with you, Chris.
Fine, I've got plenty to do, but I sure have enjoyed the opportunity to talk to the nice nonprofit folks there in Ocala.
Yes, thank you. We really appreciated hearing from you. And if anybody has any questions after we get done with this, or they would like to go ahead and talk to Chris later, please feel free to reach out to me. I am happy to connect you all. And if you need assistance getting connected to a Bloomerang account executive, I know that we can assist with that as well. Okay, Chris, well, I'm going to go ahead and call it. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you all soon on our next Tech Talk on Tuesday at 3 o'clock.
Thanks for hosting, Kelsey.
Thanks so much, you guys. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.